Hi and welcome to Rose Bread Homestead. Today we're going to try a new type of bread that will be very helpful for us in grid down situations, and it will be just a nice little extra if we want a fancier bread. But in particular we're doing this because this ciabatta bread is going to be used along with one of our bean dishes. So we are going to get started on ciabatta bread when we come right back. Ciabatta bread is like an artisan bread, and it is a very wet dough. To get it just right and to be sure that it's going to work for us, we really do need to have a kitchen scale and weigh out our ingredients. Now, I'm going to give the comparison measurements in standard cups, but just know that it may not turn out the same, because the most accurate way to measure ingredients is by weight and not by volume. So we are going to start with 200 grams of flour, and this is just my King Arthur all-purpose unbleached flour. So here's my scale, and I'm going to turn it on. And I am just going to put in 200 grams. If you don't have a kitchen scale yet, be sure that you get one that will do the metric scale as well as standard measurements. All right. 200 grams of flour is the same as about a cup and a half. Now we are going to put in 200 grams of water that is at room temperature, which in our case is about 70 degrees. So it is going to feel cool to my hand. Now I have a cup of water right here, but I'm going to have some left over when I get to 200 grams, and I'll show you how much I have left over. So I have about 1 ounce left over. That is about 2 tablespoons. So it is a scant 1 cup of water, 2 tablespoons short. Then I'm going to, in the flour, before I add the water, I'm going to add a standard measurement of this instant yeast. It's going to be 1/4 of a teaspoon. Now what we are mixing up here is called a poolish, because what's going to happen is it is going to, and I'm mixing the yeast into the flour, it is going to sit overnight and ferment. And it is the fermentation that is going to give the poolish its delicious artisan flavor. So as you can see, it's going to be a wet dough. Now overnight, this is going to ferment. So in the morning, when we come to check on it, it will be full of bubbles. And when I take the plastic off the top, I wish you could be here to smell it, because it's going to smell fabulous. And this little poolish is part of the leaven of the full recipe that we will put together tomorrow morning. So it has to sit overnight, about 15 hours. You could even leave it 20 hours if you wanted more richness in the fermentation. Okay, so this is what it looks like. The poolish part is now done. All right, here we go, covering it with plastic wrap. All right, it's out on the countertop all night long, and we'll be back in about 15 hours to finish up. It has been a little over 15 hours, and here is our poulish, so let's check it. Notice how spongy it looks. It's all bubbly. Oh my goodness. It just smells heavenly. So it's pretty thin. This bread is 80% hydration. And I'll show you how we figure that out. First of all, we are going to mix the rest of the ingredients. And so the first thing is to get my scale going here. And we need 350 grams of flour, which is about 2 2/3 cups. So much better to weigh it, 350 grams. And I'm going to be using these little containers that I do for my artisan bread. This is a 6-quart container, and I will put the link on the website because this is something that I use all the time for mixing bread. So the flour is going to go right in here. And then we need 2 teaspoons of yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, and half a teaspoon of yeast. In these breads that are more fermented, you will notice that the amount of yeast is quite decreased. And that is because they are given a lot of time to ferment, which gives it the flavor. So here's a half a teaspoon of yeast. Now I'm just going to get in here with my hands. My hands are very clean. I just washed them, and mix that around. 240 grams of water, and this water is room temperature water. It's not hot, hot, hot. So 240, and I have a cup right here. There's about a tablespoon left. Now that water goes into the poulish. And so what I'm going to do, because I want to get all of this poulish out of this bowl, I'm going to, just with my scraper, kind of scrape around the edges so that we can let that water get in there and loosen everything. And now this whole mixture goes right into this container. And we get the little last bit here. We don't want to leave anything behind. Right, now comes the mixing part. And what I'm going to do, and it's with my hands, you have your choice here. You can use a wooden spoon if this grosses you out, or you can use your stand mixer because this is going to be a very wet dough. Now remember, we have yeast and salt in there along with the water and the flour. So I'm just going to reach underneath and bring it up and over, and it's going to be wet. This is an 80% hydration. Now what that means is the total amount of flour in this case is, let's see, that's 550 grams of flour. And then with the water of 440, and divide that by 550, you can even do that right now on your phones, 240 divided by 550, it will be 80%. And that means by weight, the water, the hydration, is an 80% hydration. Okay, now it's picking up all of the flour. And so I am going to start doing a pinch and fold. Now that pinch and fold is this. This is a pinch. I pinch across the whole thing. And yes, it is sticky on my hands. That's part of what this is. And then after I have done that, then I fold it, reaching underneath and lifting it up over the top. Pinch. And now fold. Now this is pretty well mixed. I'm no longer feeling the salt or the yeast. And so it is time now for us to let this rest for an hour. So I'm going to just put the lid on here after I wash my hands. And it will sit out here. My kitchen is about 70 degrees. So it will sit right here for an hour, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what is next. It is time for our last fold. I did one off camera, and then all we're going to do here is just one last fold. Stretch and put it over. Across from that one, we're going to stretch and pull it over. Quarter turn, same thing. And then across from that one, stretch and pull it over. And then we're going to turn the whole thing over. So it's on this last 45-minute resting period, and then in 45 minutes we're going to come back and shape it, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do. To very gently take it out of here because we don't want to degas it. We want a lot of that gas still in it. And then I'm going to shape it, and I'm going to put it on this inverted cookie sheet with a piece of parchment paper. In about 15 minutes, I'm going to put these two things in the oven. This cookie sheet, I'm going to also inverted, put it on the middle shelf. And this cast iron skillet is going to go on the very bottom rack. And after these are shaped here and have risen for about, they've proofed for about 30 minutes, then the oven has to be at 450. So I'm going to start the oven in 15 minutes. It needs to have a full hour to get up to the proper temperature, to make sure that this and this are all super hot at 450. Then what we will do is, with our loaves of bread, this will be in the oven. Then I'm just going to go like this with little jerky motions, and hopefully the bread will then move over onto the top of this one in the oven, so that it's on now the hot one in the oven. And I'm going to put a cup of ice in here so that we can have steam to form that wonderful crust on the ciabatta bread. And if that wasn't enough for one video, we're going to make a bruschetta. I'm so excited. We're going to use smoky beans as one of our bean recipes, and we're going to make that while the bread bakes. And then once the bread comes out of the oven, we will let it cool, and then we'll cut some pieces, toast those pieces, and put the smoky bean on top of the ciabatta, and we will have a wonderful bruschetta just in time for lunch. So we'll see you in about 45 minutes. All right, we are now ready to take the dough out of this container and shape it. And for this, we are going to need a bunch of flour. We're fighting the sun on the bar here. It's getting that time of year again. We need lots of flour. So I'm going to just very, very carefully work this dough out without degassing. Okay, and we don't want to handle it very much at all. So I'm going to cut it in half, and we'll move this one over to the side. Very wet dough. And then just using these bench scrapers, we're just going to sort of pat it and shape it. And then pick them up and lay them out. Ah. Now we're just going to cover this with a tea towel and let them proof for about 30 minutes. So I'm still dodging the sun. It makes colors just go crazy. 30 minutes, and here we have our ciabatta. I feel more confident using a pizza peel than I do sliding from an inverted baking sheet. So I'm going to do this. Actually, I need to turn it this way, I think. And I think it'll work just fine. So let's come over to the oven. Okay, here we go. I've got the cup of ice. I'm just going to lift this out of the way and dump. And with a pizza peel, that worked great.
That was nice.
And we're done. Okay, so we'll come back in about 35 minutes when they're done, and they have to be up to about 210 degrees internally. So I'll check, and when they're ready to come out, we'll be back. Let's go get that ciabatta. I'll be right back. Oh my goodness, look at this. Crust is very hard. That steam sure did the work. Okay. We are going to let these cool. While they're cooling, we're going to mix up our smoky beans so we can have some bruschetta. So, I just can hardly wait to see what our ciabatta looks like on the inside. We'll be right back. I'm going to set up. It only takes about 10 minutes to mix up these beans. It is so fast. And we are going to be using 1 pint of our home canned Great Northern beans that we already have a video out on. So I'm just going to open those up right now. And they are good. Okay, the first thing that we do is, and I am using some, let's see, this is Tuscan herb infused olive oil. So I'm just going to put in about a tablespoon. And this is 2 tablespoons of dehydrated onions. I have rehydrated them. And so as soon as this gets smoky here, we'll put these in for a minute. Here we go, in with the onions. Now we don't have to cook until these are soft because obviously we just rehydrated them. They are already soft. And so we just need to cook them until they get a tiny bit golden. Then we're going to add the beans. And just like a lot of beans, they absorb more of the liquid after we take them out of the canner. Now when I canned these Great Northern beans, I did not have any cannellini beans, but now I do, so I'm so excited about that. Turning the heat down. Now I'm going to add the spices. So it's a half a teaspoon of paprika, a fourth of a teaspoon of chili flakes, a fourth of a teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of thyme. And this is all going in. It is the paprika, it is the smoky paprika that gives the beans their smoky taste. And we are smashing about half of them. We want half of them intact, but about half of them to be mashed. Or bruschetta, which is a bread like ciabatta on the bottom, and then antipasto or whatever else we want on the top. We are starting to use beans now as our protein because meat is so expensive, and so instead of any kind of meat, salami or whatever, we are using these Great Northern beans. And we are going to take a loaf of our ciabatta and see how it is. Crusty crust. So there it is. It looks pretty good. It may have risen to a more round shape than we like. I'm going to cut about 4 of these. So it's supposed to be very, very holy. And it's a little bit holy, but not as much as I would like. But I'm sure that it is wonderful. In fact, I'm going to cut one more because I think I'm going to eat that one right there. So I'm going to turn the fire off now and just let those beans stay warm in the cast iron, which they will do. I love the crust on this. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to put these in the oven. It's still at 450. There is now, I flipped that baking pan over so it's no longer inverted. I'm going to sprinkle a little olive oil on it, and I'm going to toast these 4 pieces. And then I'm going to come back and take a bite of this, and we'll find out how we like it. It's phenomenal. The fermentation is just right. The taste is incredible. The crust is crunchy. The crumb is soft and just gives way as you bite into it. So as soon as this toast is done, we'll pull it out and top it with these smoky beans, and we'll have a little bit of bruschetta for lunch. All right, these are out of the oven. I'm just going to rub the tops of these with a clove of garlic. I have a cut edge that I'm pushing against here. All right, the beans are still nice and warm. Smoky beans. Akin to refried, but totally different taste. I don't have a shaker for this, so I just have, this is smoky paprika that I'm topping these with. And a little drizzle of this olive oil. What about it, honey? Are you ready for lunch?
I am ready for lunch.
Okay, so here these are. They are fabulous. They look gorgeous. The food is delicious. Homemade ciabatta bread with this smoky bean mixture. A great start to our recipes that we're going to be using with beans. So thanks for being with us, and we will see you again soon.